Well, there's Jeanette. Jeanette's joining us that
I
way.
guess that's the way they're gonna do it, yeah.
It's easier for the audio.
I'd say they're not here. They're there.
It's like, audio is easier on there, and plus they can get the presentation through the Zoom.
It's easy to go to sleep.
Right?
Everybody else.
Anybody?
Leon.
Leon. Leon. He probably is coming in from work. He usually comes running.
Kyle is here as well.
Good. All right.
Hey everyone.
Hey, Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
Hey, how are y'all doing?
Hanging in there.
Feel like I'm looking down on a bird's eye view into the
Oh, let me give us a little zoom in here.
No, it's okay. It's fine.
Oh.
Yep.
That's great.
Who knew?
That's my new hobby. That's what I get to do when I'm on the select board now.
Okay.
All right, it's a little bit after 5:30, so let's go ahead and get started.
Recording in progress.
So welcome. Thank everyone who's here tonight. We do have quite a bit on the agenda. So let me go ahead and bring that up real quick. Had it on my screen and it disappeared. I did try to print it, but the printer was out of print. So the first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from 9/26/2024.
Make a motion to approve them. Hopefully everybody read them.
Yes.
I wrote them. I wrote them.
I seconded it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Okay, so the next item, now that everyone's here, I would like to move this because we do have a guest. So I would like to move the committee and subgroup reports to after the presentation so that we can get that done. If those of you who do have PC or whatever, if you do want to join the Zoom, if you have problems seeing the television screen, you can join the Zoom that's on the website, and you'll be able to see the presentation a little bit closer if you're having issues up there. So the item that I would like to move up is Kyle Murphy is an architect who has local roots here in Manchester and works for Cato. And he has put together a vision plan, if you will, for the Airport Road project. It is, I think what's exciting just in general is to get excited about vision and what is possible in our community. And because we never know what ideas can then come from that and how we can maybe move forward in any direction. By no means, and this isn't no dig to Kyle, this is not approved by the Housing Task Force or anything, is something that Kyle was asked to make a presentation to the task force. And we are very happy to have him here tonight.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And thanks everyone for having me. It's great to be able to share some of our thinking with you. So before I jump in, I guess maybe I thought Jonathan did a great job kind of prefacing what we've been thinking, and maybe just to go back a little bit, I've been chatting with Gordon and some others for the past, I don't know, year or two about, I guess just, ways to think about leveraging that property to think about different types of housing and how that could come together in a vision that could represent kind of a cohesive way to think about this problem in a regional way. So we wanted just to, take a stab at putting together like a concept of one way that that could look. And I should say that, by no means is everything that we're showing set in stone. I think there's a lot of kind of evolution that this would go through as we develop it. But, we thought a good starting point would be just to share it with this group and get some feedback. And I think the big thing from here is just to, once we have a conversation about it, just to be able to then, because I mentioned to Jonathan and Gordon, I thought it was best to share it with all of you before we started, talking with anybody on the development side or anyone who may take an interest in that property. Just so that we're, moving forward in a way that's, representing the way that the town would potentially want to use that property. So I guess before getting into it, Jonathan, I just want to be mindful of the overall meeting tonight. Is there a certain time that you'd like to kind of keep this discussion to?
So I was targeting 20 minutes.
Okay,
Let's-
great. Yeah, that works. So I think I can share.
Might have to hit this, they adjust it all.
Is everybody seeing the screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we, just to start at a very macro level, one way we've been trying to think about this is like, how do we think about the housing issue from a standpoint of providing many different types of units, and also thinking about how that relates to, as we would call it, density of housing, because obviously different densities have different cost implications and different, different ways of living, so to speak. So we started by organizing that on basically a density gradient, where we were going from the lowest density, which would be single family homes, up through what we would say middle density is like a duplex, triplex, and we're also thinking of live work units, and I can speak to that a little bit more. And then up to the higher density of more of a townhouse. And I use the word apartment loosely because we don't want to suggest that we're, I know sometimes people hear that and they think like, we don't want to turn Manchester into New Jersey or something. So we're not thinking of like massive apartment buildings, but just something that provides that range of density for, I'm thinking of, if there's a young single person that moves to Manchester and maybe they don't need a ton of space, so that kind of thing. So we set it up on this gradient, and then here we go. So I assume everyone's familiar enough with the rough footprint of the property. We have the old landing field next to it, the industrial park, and then the two main neighborhoods we'd be concerned with are Carlin Street and the Green Mountain neighborhood, and then bounded by Route 7 and Ridgeville Road. So I assume everyone's pretty familiar with the property, but I figured I'd highlight that.
Hey, Kyle?
Yeah.
Your microphone, I don't know if it's you're moving away from it, but it's hard to hear you.
Okay, I can bring the computer closer. Is that helpful? I don't know.
It could be. It sounds a little bit technical.
Like this
Like,
interference.
yeah, it's like the signals going in and out.
Just give me one moment. I can show, I have a headphone microphone. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Might be some background interference.
We did have some audio issues last night with the
Okay.
or 2 nights ago with the select board meeting, so it may be internet related here.
Is that better?
It's consistent.
Okay. Was what I just shared legible at least, or would you like me to? I'm happy to go back over it.
I think we got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically what we did was we were trying to be mindful of, the fact that there are residential neighbors to this property, and, given that this property could accommodate a significant amount of housing, we thought it would be appropriate if we thought about the lowest density being basically at the perimeter of the property. And then if there's some way to kind of work up towards that higher density at the center where it would be most insulated from any of the residential neighbors, both visually and also in terms of any, noise concerns. I know that's, at least with these larger projects, usually the things that come up. So we thought about the whole project as basically these 3 arms of buildings that would radiate out from the center. And then by thinking of it as, it's basically these three green corridors that would converge at a central public space. It's almost like a little village unto itself, that all of the buildings are placed along the kind of twisting shape, if you will. And then that would continue out to due to the fact that it's a triangular site, each one of those arms would continue out to the corner where it would become that lower density where there could be single family homes. So we would basically be providing that range of density of housing along each one of those arms of the project. And then that would allow the space in between to be pedestrian only. And I can speak a little bit to how we were thinking about some of the, parking and vehicular circulation. So just to give a few visualizations to this, and this is the part I should say that none of this is totally set in stone in terms of materiality or even, the size or shape of the buildings. I think this is really just about providing a kind of a cohesive view. So this is looking more to the north. And we saw this as an opportunity to create something that would feel like it's almost like an extension of the landscape, where the actual slopes of the roofs, for example, would almost feel like it's kind of taking its place on the topography, especially with the mountain backdrop. And so this would be in that central public space looking towards Equinox, where there would be just kind of a big open space that could be used for lots of community type functions. So we've tried to think about this beyond just the number of units that this would provide, but also like what types of amenities could this offer to the community beyond just the housing. And so to give a sense of what some of the views on the interior could be, this is one that's looking out towards the south. But the idea would be, because of the way the buildings are configured, both sides of every building would have some mountain view, no matter what the direction would be. And then this is along that green corridor that's looking, in this case, to the north. And these are some of what we envision being some of that middle density housing. So like live work units. I'm thinking if there was, a creative person who wanted to have kind of an art studio that was connected to a residential unit. So we've made an effort just to think about as many different types of tenants in terms of demographics that that this could benefit and this could be relevant for. So it's kind of looking to the west. And so there could be opportunities to do, in this case, this would be like a rooftop restaurant or bar space that would be looking out to the valley. And, again, just something that would offer more to the community than beyond the residential use. So I don't think, for the sake of the time we have tonight, we don't need to go too far into the weeds on the technicalities. I think maybe just to touch on some of the numbers here. In this case, we were showing, at least in the images that I've shown up to this point, that the site is zoned for up to 600 units based on the 60 acres and the 10 units per acre that the zoning allows for this site, which that might be a bit much, even though that's allowed by the zoning. So we've shown it's about 450 units between so each of the colors sort of represents a different level of density, and then some of the other non-residential uses. So this is something that could easily be adapted. I think this was just something we wanted to get on the table and initiate a discussion about. Also, just in terms of the breakdown of what that means for the different types of units, that's certainly something that can evolve, I think, as we get further into this. Just to give a sense of the site plan. And I'm happy to make, this PDF available if anybody wants to have more time to take a look at this more closely. So I think this slide would be important when we think about any of the neighbor considerations, because you can get a sense of, in this case, the Carlin Street neighborhood, of what that distance would be in relation to the property. Green Mountain Road is actually not even on this drawing because it's far enough to the left that it wouldn't be close enough to be an issue. But we wanted to include these just to give a sense of, what do those building heights really look like in kind of a profile view, and how does that relate to some of the existing density that's around the site. So you can see based on the topography and the density of trees, the project would really be completely invisible from any of those areas around the site. Even when we think about down on Richville Road, you might get some glimpse of the rooftops from Route 7, but at least from the residential areas, there wouldn't be really any visual connection, and there's a pretty high density of foliage around that. So, and then some of these were, I can touch on these, but some of these were more for conversations we may have with anybody on the development side who was interested in, like, how do we think about phasing this project? Because, many times these projects happen in different phases where it's not all the construction isn't happening at once. So in this case, we've shown the project could be done where it's by housing type. In this case, kind of starting at the center and radiating out towards the corners, or it could be the kind of thing where each one of those arms, if you will, is constructed in an individual phase. Some of the environmental considerations of this. So this is sort of a buffet of ideas that we've compiled just to think about how many ways could we make the project as sustainable as possible. So between things like green roofs and solar and water collection for irrigation on site, geothermal, mass timber structure, which I'll speak to in a moment. So I think that the project would represent a kind of a range of things that can be done just to lower the carbon footprint. And so I think this, for anyone we would talk to on the development side, these are just some kind of breakdowns of how that actual construction would work. So I think the big thing is, even though the project appears to be curved in order to kind of envelop that central public space, each one of the bays of the buildings is actually a straight, flat surface that cumulatively is working along that curve. So the way that looks kind of applied to some of the images here is each one of those segments that would represent an individual structural bay of the buildings is actually a flat surface, and it's a straight line, but collectively that creates that shape that follows the curve as it comes out from the central space. And so the whole project is defined by 3 points. So every one of the buildings is the same radial distance from those points, which that would help to simplify each of the structural bays. So if we highlight one of those buildings, and then we highlight one of the bays of those buildings, we've shown a couple ways that could be constructed just to accommodate different construction approaches. So I don't mean to go too deep in the weeds on this, but I think this is important for anyone who may look at this through a developer lens of, like, how is this really going to pencil out given the current state of construction and the cost of construction. So we've shown 2 different options, one of which is more of a traditional dimension lumber. And I should say the project qualifies for both, in terms of the height of the buildings, it would qualify for a dimensional lumber approach, or what we would call a mass timber, which is, glulam beams and columns. And then there are special, the decking that's called CLT that's used in that sort of approach, and that's becoming more and more common in housing projects now. So the project, based on the building codes, and then the height of the buildings that we're showing, would qualify for either. And we would want to just be able to present this to a development team and say, here are some different ways we could approach the construction to control costs. And so I know I'm moving quickly through this. I'm happy to come back to any of these slides. I just want to be mindful of the overall timeframe we have. So when we kind of explode one of those buildings, you can see those repetitive elements. So everything in red would be that repetitive floor deck piece. And then there could be prefabricated wall sections and roof sections that are repeated over the whole kind of shape of the building, and then therefore repeated over the whole project, that would help to give an economy of scale basically to everything that we're showing. So another way that we would hope to control cost on this is through thinking about the incorporation of loft style units. And what this allows us to do is eliminate corridor from, we don't need a corridor on every floor, and that increases the overall building efficiency so that more of the constructed space goes to actual rentable square footage of units instead of to circulation space that's not rentable, and that helps with the overall economics of a project. So this is just putting a side by side between buildings like we're showing that have those loft units incorporated and therefore only need sometimes corridor on every other floor, with a more typical apartment building where you tend to have corridors on every level that are stacked. So in general, we estimate that gets us about a 5 to 10% efficiency back on the overall project. So that can make a huge difference in a developer pro forma. And then the third way that we would hope to control cost is by including what we would call like efficiency units or micro units. So here we've put, for example, 2 studio apartments side by side. And, you know, I'm sure many of you have seen, there are many great examples of small, you know, compact units that have been just designed in a really, really effective way to you know, do more with less, so to speak. And that allows us to get more units within a given building envelope, which also would be an improvement for a developer pro forma. So in each one of these unit types between studio, 1 bedroom, and, you know, however many bedrooms we'd want to be including in the units, there would basically be a range of size, and that would allow there to be more units offered at different price points. So, you know, if you're a young single person and you're just moving to the area and you really just need kind of the bare bones space, and there's something that's offered for a very low price, we would hope that more of the units would be what we could call naturally affordable, rather than needing more subsidy or outside subsidy to be supporting the project. So in essence, we would just be getting more total units within a given building volume than if we did all of the same unit type, and they could be offered at different price points. And then here's just just to give an example of how some of those units could kind of populate the buildings based on the loft style, but also thinking about the total number of bedrooms. So just to summarize on the cost, I think our hope would be that if we combine those 3 things between maximizing unit counts of incorporating these efficiency units, reducing the amount of corridor space that's needed by having loft style units, and the repetitive nature of the construction, even though the buildings look complex, they all can be reduced to that, you know, those simple ways of approaching each individual structural bay. Our hope is that by bringing all 3 of those things together, that would collectively help to control cost, so that something like this would be attractive and financially feasible for a development team, and then therefore as many units as possible would be able to be offered to the community at an affordable price. So anyway, I think that's kind of the gist of it. And I think, you know, again, this is us kind of taking a shot in the dark at, you know, we want to contribute to this problem in a regional sense, and you know, think about this as a potential regional solution, given that this is a huge piece of land that the town owns, and you know, something that really could be leveraged and could be used in an exciting way for something like this. So anyway, I'm happy to go back over any of this. I hope I wasn't too quick going through all this, but I'm happy to take any questions on it.
Kyle, do you have any pictures of the parking lots, or where the snow will be removed to in the lots? Because that's something that this town has to look at, is snow removal and where it would be stored, big piles of snow. That's a lot of road added.
Sure. Yeah, it is. And I should say, this is us just taking, we haven't worked with a civil engineer yet or a landscape architect to kind of help us, I would say, you know, lay this out in maybe the best way that it could be in order to minimize road. But we've broken down the parking in a way that each sort of grouping of parking would serve a grouping of buildings like this. So you know, our hope would be that there would still be enough room within each of the parking areas that there could be space to deal with the snow removal. Are you talking, am I understanding right? Like, are you talking about on site just being able to plow, or are you talking about moving
big
it?
piles of snow?
Yeah.
So Kyle, what's your budget cost on a square foot basis for this?
So we haven't gotten the price yet because we haven't worked with a CM to do any estimation on this so far. I wanted to have a chance to talk to all of you first before we, started putting it out there in a more public way, but that would certainly be one of the next steps is to talk to an estimator or a CM who could help us on the cost front.
I mean, just as a backdrop,
Ballpark.
I think what we heard from one of the people that came in was, the cost needs to be somewhere in the 250 a square foot. You see that on this project?
Yeah, I know it's that I've heard a similar range too. I think it could, I may be naive, but our hope would be between the few cost saving measures that we had shown that we would be able to, keep the square footage costs pretty low, and that enough of this could be constructed off site and shipped onto the project in terms of, prefabricated wall pieces or floor slabs. So, but we'd have to work with somebody on kind of more of the estimation front in order to drill down into that more.
Have you done any projects this size, or been involved in any projects this size, or?
Yeah, so we have been working on a project in Brattleboro for the Winston Prouty Center. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that campus, but they've been looking to do, I would say it's a similar scale to what we're showing here, where it's roughly in the 400 or so unit range. And we, over the past couple of years, we've worked with them on a master plan to think about how, how their land could be leveraged in a similar way. So that, I should say, that project hasn't been built. So that's, we haven't built any project that's anywhere near this scale, but we've at least been involved on the design front.
But have you, the other project that you were working on, have they come up with any budget numbers on that or nothing yet?
There was some folks kind of internal to their team that had done some kind of back of the napkin estimation as far as I know, but I don't believe that there was anything.
And what kind of numbers were they talking about?
I would have to
Okay.
pull that up. I don't want to misrepresent any of the information without knowing it.
No, understand.
Will there be electric vehicle chargers on site?
Yeah, so we absolutely, I think there would, within the parking areas, there would be designated EV plugging, yeah.
Is there any limitation, because the airport is right next to it? Is there a border that you can't cross, or a building that can't be so high next to the airport?
As far as the airport goes, I don't believe that there's any restriction.
It just looks like it's awful close in a couple places there, and I'm just wondering how close a building could be and or how high next to.
Yeah. We, as far as the setbacks go, I'd have to look back at the town zoning, but we had done kind of a rough measurement to get a set, and I should say some of this could be easily, pulled in a little bit if we needed to, but we had done a rough measurement just to get a sense of, make sure that we're not encroaching on those setback requirements.
It's not gonna be an airport ever.
The building, I didn't know if that mattered, or like the higher one you had there or not. Probably doesn't on the side.
So
Kind of lower, isn't it? A little bit lower there. I'm not sure. Where you're putting your buildings.
yes,
Yeah, you're talking about some of the low density housing.
Okay, I have a
so we've got a question here.
So Kyle, I couldn't see the numbers and I didn't get on, but the configuration of the 450 units that you're saying, do we have any stats? And forgive me if you all know this and I don't. Do we have stats that support that that's the density we need?
Oh, yes. So that's a great question. So what we've been working off of is I believe it was 2019 study. Was it Kennedy Advisors, I believe, that did the study that was right before COVID, that I recall something like a 300 to 400 unit deficit being shown for our region. And think at that time that wasn't, that was just sort of breaking even on what we would need. That wasn't really aspirational. So our sense was that has probably grown since then. So we, that's why we were showing over that 400 range. But, again, I think we need to, it would be probably a lengthy community engagement process, and also working with a suitable development team to really drill down into, what's the appropriate number to be showing and how does that work in terms of the phasing and the types of units that are being shown. But that was sort of where that ballpark came from. Was thinking back to that housing study that I believe it was 2019, right before COVID.
And I know this is something that's coming up next week, actually, when we were originally planning having our meeting on the 24th. The BCRC is working on the regional plan. And I know there's some discussion about the allocation of what the expectation of how many houses, what the need is per community.
Oh, good. That's good.
That's next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
I'm actually trying to scramble through here to see what this is a draft, and this is the annual municipal housing targets for the Bennington region. And it's saying that a 6-year target would be 200 units for Manchester. That's not including the village, by the way.
Yeah.
And that's broken out into different sizings, 10 for ADU, 71 unit, which appears to be one of the largest sectors, 75 2-bedroom houses that would be owned.
Mhm.
So that's those are kind of the numbers. Now, this is obviously in flux, and this is to be discussed at that regional meeting, but I think that's.
Yeah, that's important for funding.
So, Kyle, on one of your slides, you had what the square footage was on those, the 1-bedroom, the 2-bedroom. Can you pull that slide up again? And just because I couldn't really read it, but I think 3-bedroom was 1,000 square feet and.
They're small. It goes small as 250, like 75 square.
Yeah. So what's the studio size?
So the studio we're showing at 275 up to about 500, a little over 500
Yeah.
square feet.
1-bedroom?
1 bedroom's 510 to 780, 2
Yeah.
bedrooms 780 to 1020, and then 3 bedrooms 1020 to 1290.
And just, I know you've got a lot of rental units, but even the rental units that I was involved in Rutland, a 2-bedroom was ranging in like the 800 to 900 square.
Yeah.
And those were in constant, and even the 1-bedrooms coming in at 600 to 650 square feet were very hot. And I think it's also a discussion in general. I know, Leon, you and I have talked about this, and I think some of us as well, is discussion of rethinking what some folks are looking in terms of housing. I know we have several members in our community who are living in much smaller dwellings than maybe we would have been able to do or had built in the 70s and 80s, which when it was easy to build, not easy, but it was building something much larger.
More economical.
It was more economical. So yeah, I think that, looking at 275 is certainly, it's a 275 square foot. I think I was having a discussion sometime recently with someone, and I don't remember who it was, but just discussing someone that was within the vicinity of the municipality, and, that may be a great starting point for like our beginning teachers at MEMS or those types of folks who are coming into the community.
I also just want to say that as I understand this, because I've seen a more detailed description of it, this really would be considered a regional housing, not just Manchester.
Right.
Winston Prouty and Brattleboro may be in Brattleboro, but that's a regional housing thing. And if it's phased, phase 1, phase 2, whatever the phases are, it may be that in 10 years, you don't need to build an additional 100 or additional 150, but that's what the phases would allow you to do.
Sure. And just, if we were to take, just looking at the numbers on this BCRC study for the 6-year target, I'll grant it, we've been talking these numbers for 40 years. So let's just use the 6-year target here and say that the 6-year target is for the entire county is roughly 1,100 units, right? So if we were to take, let's just take the biggest chunk out of that and say Bennington, we're roughly at 600 units spread out the rest of the county. If you were to just take the northern half, I'd be willing to bet that 400 units would sit right in that sweet spot of potential. Because looking at these other numbers, Sunderland, 30 units just down the road, right? Dorset, 40 units. But the biggest demand in terms of housing targets of where they need, according to this particular study or plan, is that Manchester, is at least in this case 4 times what Dorset needs, if not more.
About sewer and water for the development there, that takes up water.
It would have to involve sewer and water being extended by the town down Richville and up Airport Road or across the airport property.
You're saying it has to have the village.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The village?
No,
I mean, not the village, sorry.
Sewer.
Sewer, town.
And I think what's interesting, I noticed that you included, obviously, a lot of it is conceptual, but you included geothermal networks, which is a piece that, Tim, you were there with me the other night, just discussing the potential. Look, we have the potential of expanding the sewer line down Richville Road. And there is a potential sweet spot for the development of wastewater being used to heat as part of a geothermal network. And that's within a 1/4 mile of this development. So this could be part of that geothermal network, which, and we need to still discuss the cost benefits and whatnot. But ultimately, if it's a more communal piece, that's a piece that could potentially be granted, right, as part of a larger project, which takes some of the cost off of the infrastructure of the building.
Well, I'd like to ask, first of all, Kyle, I think the design it's a really strong design.
Thank you.
You really thought out a lot of things that a community should have, because it essentially is its own community. It's its own town within our town. That area would be, I have a couple concerns. My concern would be the traffic coming out of a 600 unit development onto Ridgeville Road.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that road would be able to, we'd probably need a light there at that point, because it would be so much traffic coming in and out, or a circle. Another thing is, I see you thought about the townhouses in a modular fashion, which I think is a great way to look at it. And there's a lot of companies nowadays that can basically cut and build the whole thing in pieces in a factory and then ship it here flatbed and assemble it on site, which is, that's a great thing. It keeps the cost down.
Right.
Do we have anybody here? Do we have any idea who we would get to build or develop these stages of this development? Is there any, or do we have any leads as a group of who would build it?
Last night when I was speaking with the woman, Katie Buckley, she mentioned Hale.
Which is the company that's doing Ben High.
Bennington,
Yeah.
At the Bennington High. And she mentioned contacting them.
I would say that Hale has so much on their plate right now that we would be lined up for 20 years down the road if they can finish the projects they have.
Yeah.
And I think highly of them. They've just got a big project right now.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while.
My question is, would we be better off getting an out-of-state developer from a lower cost state that builds houses on a much lower cost and bringing a developer here with their crew to build it on, rather than using, they're all of our local builders. I know a lot of them, they're spread thin.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't have time to build something like this. So it would have to be,
And there's not much down here in the
there's not
south.
a lot of big developers
Yeah,
here, so we
right.
have to bring in someone from the state.
Yeah.
Probably, Texas or someplace where they can build houses quickly and cheaper.
O'Brien Brothers, O'Brien.
I don't even know that we're
Yeah.
close to that kind of a discussion.
I just
But you're-
wanted a discussion about what we would do if we were to move forward with this, like what would be the.
I mean, when I look at this, just real, the town owns the property. Right now, there's no tax money being paid. It's just sitting, getting virtually nothing. There may be some small amount of rent that's paid by the Land Rover folks,
Right.
but that's not very much. And so it's an asset we have that's grossly underutilized. If it's possible to have some town involvement with the public-private partnership, the land is somehow thrown in there, we can work on a water and sewer extension, that might help keep the costs down. And a project like this, whether it's this one or something else or something smaller, I think that's the type of thing we should be talking about. And then the developer, you know, that's down the road.
Donating the property is what you're saying.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, there's-
Probably, in a perfect world, sure,
What probably would have to happen for the.
If, if the town set it up as a land trust, then they would have control over if it becomes short-term rentals or not. Because we wouldn't want to build this development and have every single unit suddenly become a short-term rental.
Right.
If we keep it as a land trust, the town owns the land, then it can be, they can, you know, we can stipulate what happens on it.
So I think, so what I would, first of all, Kyle, thank you very much for bringing this. And I agree with Leon. I think I said it on the offset, you know, leading with a vision, any vision can inspire ideas and discussion. And I think that was pretty evident, you know, the other day we at that, the geothermal networks, presentation, that it just started conversations that may not have started, and gets, you know, the creative juices flowing. I think this also gives us a great conceptual, whether or not the buildings will look like this or anything, of the potential of what does 400 units potentially look like, right? That sometimes is difficult to grasp. So I think from our perspective, I don't know if there's any other questions here on the board. I know we do need to move on, but I mean, what do you see as your next steps, Kyle? And what would you potentially need from us? Because I do think that there are some areas that we potentially could start working together, at least conceptually, on, you know, if we include a geothermal network, how does that include, you know, any sort of incentive financing or grant money? We have a sewer plan right now to discuss that expansion. How is that going to tie into this? Because what we wouldn't want to do is move forward on a plan that would potentially not allow this potential, and then have to come back to the drawing board and, you know, redig up the lines. So it's a lot of things that could be moving right now in terms of infrastructure that we have to try to make sure we get right in preparation for something that may be coming down the road.
but that could all be phased in as
Sure.
discussed earlier, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know, first of all, thanks everyone for, you know, the kind words on this. And I think, you know, Jonathan, you're absolutely right that the goal of this is just to kind of initiate a dialogue and see where that can lead. So I think, you know, with respect to your question, I think the main thing is I was just looking for kind of everyone's blessing to just be able to share this beyond the committee at this point, because there are, you know, to the earlier point that came up, there are some private developers that may take an interest in something like this, who I have a relationship with, and some of them are in state, some are out of state, and you know, I'd love to be able to share it with them and just see what can come of that, both from the development and on the construction side as well. So, and I think, you know, the point about sewer and water is correct too, that, you know, I believe it's a 4-inch line of water that's coming in now that would have to be upgraded to probably a, you know, 8 or 10 or 12-inch water line, and then the sewer point as well. So, but yeah, I mean, I think between the utilities and the cost of the land, that anything that can be done that can make it easier for a development team to come in and then there would be a much greater tax revenue benefit to the area that would come from a property like this with a project of this size. So I think anything that the town would be able to do to kind of ease the financial burdens of those things for a developer would be ideal. And then I guess the last point on that is some of this also would be relevant for some of the larger local employers too, that I think it would be good of us to share with them as well, because there's been RFPs that I've read from other municipalities around the state where they've talked very openly about, local employers kind of pre-leasing or pre-buying units, and that can help the overall metrics of the project. So I think if there was a consortium of some of the larger companies in the area that took an interest like that could be something that would be of high benefit to this. So anyway, just to kind of round off, I think the big thing is just to be able to share this beyond the group, and we would obviously make clear that this is not something that the town is formally endorsing yet. This is not some completed vision that we're looking for that level of approval. But I think I just kind of wanted everyone's blessing to be able to do that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Kyle. I appreciate it.
Thanks, thank you.
I'll say one other thing, the Winston Prouty project, in addition to whatever else they got, there was a lot of grant money that's been at least pointed in that direction. Because I was on some grant review groups, and that was routinely the #1 project that people wanted to buy
Was that,
with grant money,
I believe that was some of the federal money.
probably.
Yeah, so there was federal money that came in part of this. I know Ben High got some of that money as well as, I believe, Winston Prouty. So
John,
One of the
you-
things though about this is that most of the money that's out there is for housing that's 80% AMI or below.
yeah,
So we have to sort of
Right.
understand that a lot of this grant money is earmarked for that
Sure.
kind of, that kind of housing.
John, you mentioned at one of the, you said that the need locally was more like 200. Was that what you said? I'm just trying to understand what size scope we're talking about here. I mean,
So, and
600,
again,
400, but. I
this was based on the Vermont Housing Needs Assessment that was prepared. I think the goal was to look at what the targets need to be for 2050 by 2050, but that hasn't been established yet. So according to this table, the housing target for Manchester, according to this, and again, I'm skimming through this because I just came to this, is that Manchester's need for 6 years is 200.
200, okay. And that's over 6 years or something?
That's a 6-year target, yeah.
Maybe 30 a year about.
Yeah.
So here's a real spitball idea, okay? Someone here just said that they think this would be a regional project, right?
Well, I think at 450 is what the
Yeah,
comment.
right. So if you were thinking 450 and this became a regional thing, is there a way, and this is way outside the box, sorry, I'm kind of doing an outside the box thinking here. Is there a way to pull in Dorset, Sunderland, the other villages to help us figure out the funding, but is there a way, they're going to benefit. You're going to have to really think about it, how you could collectively build it, but also benefit from it.
I think one of the points you made, sorry, and I think this is something that we can't potentially grasp. I mean, I'm looking right at you, Gordon, is that, if, let's just theoretically, to spitball, if 400 units of housing of this scale came on to our grand list in whatever capacity, what would that mean in terms of tax revenue? And that would be significant to the tune of whatever the property is worth, in my opinion, would pay for itself in tax dollars relatively quickly.
100%.
I mean, I agree with that. I'm still struggling with the development component of it. I mean, I'm still struggling with the cost
Sure.
piece.
I mean, these,
Well, that's,
if a project like this went through, say, would these be purchased, the units be purchased, or would they be rented, or what's, I don't know
I
how.
think it has to be a mix.
What are you thinking, Kyle? Mix?
Yeah, and I'll admit, I'm definitely not the expert on, how
Well,
that
that's 'cause-
decision would be made, but our estimate was that most of it would be rented, some of them could be for sale. But, I think someone had brought up the point before that there needs to be some way to control that, the units that are being considered the more affordable units are affordable in the future, and, they're controlled in that sense, so.
Yeah, the covenants.
Yeah, you just
Yeah,
put a
I think-
Put a
covenant.
covenant on it, yeah.
Right.
But I think you hit
So
on-
I think,
you hit on a
some of
good
the,
point.
the real estate experts in the area could probably speak to the rent versus sale question and what the percentage of each would be best, but our intent was that most of them would be rented units.
You hit on a good point earlier with respect to companies and larger firms where you could
Yeah.
be talking corporate housing. I mean, we're looking at that right now with Stratton.
Yeah.
I mean, you got
Yeah.
Mac Molding, you've got some of the others. So I mean, I see where you're at with that, and that does make sense. And I could see that translating into quicker, bigger, more unit buildings on a quicker scale.
Absolutely. I think, that essentially becomes almost like an anchor tenant in a way.
That's
You
right,
have a
exactly.
company that wants to grab 25 units or however many, and I would think, I'm not an expert in that arena either, but I would think that would be attractive to a development team to say, look, we have a group of companies in the area that, potentially would take interest, or, maybe we could present this to them and see, how that would fit in with their kind of long-term housing needs and how we could work with that. But I would think that would be something of high value to a developer.
I mean, looking at this development here, I mean, the townhouses are built around a green space. That green space would need to be maintained. So someone like Shire's coming in and running the loft apartments as a rental, they would then take over that green space maintenance. Because if otherwise the town would have to take it on, and that would be a cost.
Yeah, I think there's certainly, I think there's a lot of, issues. It's still conceptual. I think my main point was that just in general, you talk about we're sitting on, what's the total acreage? 60?
It's 63.
63? I mean, what, just looking at what the average acreage cost is in our community. Undeveloped, and compared to all of them that are developed, I mean, I see a significant potential benefit to our revenues in the town. I think there's some potential benefit there. So,
Well, there's a lot of, and it's more than just that. It's more than just the property tax.
Sure.
They're shopping, they're buying their groceries, they're going out to eat.
and it's stability.
And it would be a regional satisfaction of the housing demands. Dorset wouldn't have the pressure if they contributed, or at least they participated. Sunderland wouldn't, Shaftesbury
And
would.
that's the kind of the point I was also getting at, is that obviously the physical plant, if you will, the property is in Manchester. And in perpetuity, that land, until there's some charter change, is going to be in the town of Manchester. And if it did become a regional focus, and there could be a buy-in from other communities, be it Manchester, Dorset, Winhall, whatever, that revenue would still be coming here in Manchester. So,
But the benefit to those towns is that every person who lives in these units would be not only working in Manchester, but also working in all of their communities.
Absolutely.
The resorts, everyone would benefit from these people living here.
the level of stability that it would provide, I just talking to, the school district, they're struggling to keep any type of young teachers here because they're driving 45 minutes to an hour for a part-time position and then traveling to another school and to another school, they would be here in our district. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to the chart that Janet Hurley had put together that showed how many people are living and working in Manchester, how many people are working here but not living here, and you're looking at 3,000 people that are working here that aren't living here. Some, of course, by choice, but I mean, even if you took 10% of those people that said, my God, I would live here if I could afford it or could find a place for that matter, you're still talking 297 units.
Yeah.
Just to serve Manchester's needs, much less regional needs.
Okay. I do need to move on
Yeah.
because we gotta get through this. We only have a few more minutes left. So again, Kyle, thank you. I know this will not be probably the last conversation we have with you. So please keep us updated on anything that comes your way, any developments or whatnot. And if we've come across something, we will absolutely bring it to you as well.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks so much, everyone, for having me. And yeah, that's all great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right, take care.
Okay. So going backwards, the thing we wanted to discuss or that was on the agenda before this was the discussion of the committees that we created. And the first one I have, just for a check-in, is from the development planning. So it's Tim, John, and Leon. Sorry.
I've been working on a whole bit of things.
Yeah, and I've been doing the same. I mean, you know, in trying to kind of figure out cost in my mind, I mean, just what we heard, I think was about a $250 a square foot, you know, and I,
Always what we're looking for,
yeah,
but I don't think,
no,
Yeah,
forget it.
okay.
I mean, I think that's what we heard from Chrissy Paraccio. Is that, my understanding is that there was a need based on what the medium income would support, equated out to about $200 a square foot.
what was the, I guess, the price, for a house or affordable or whatever you want to call
Right.
it?
So
Is it a $200,000 house, a 175, 300? What's the number that would,
So Habitat, which is different, but we are around for a 3-bedroom, around $250,000. And it's a 1,200 square foot.
and people can afford that without
With some,
subsidies?
but that's also with us finding
the
grants,
covenant and the-
with, you know, grants and things like
So in
that.
other words,
But
if, say a teacher was coming in to buy a house in the town of Manchester,
and they were
on their salary,
50,000.
whatever they get, 50,000 a year, 60, whatever they get, 60,000 a year, what could they afford for to
Yeah.
buy for a house? I guess that's the
Well,
question.
the general rule of thumb that has been the percentage is 30% of your
Yeah.
income is anything more than 30%, you're
paying more than.
paying more than what
Out
you
of budget,
technically can
yeah.
So
afford.
if you made 60,000 a year,
20,000 of that would need to go
so
to,
divided by 12, right? A month.
1,800 a month.
yeah.
So it's 1,800, about 1,800 a month for mortgage, taxes and insurance.
So what type of mortgage would say, if your taxes are probably depend on the
I can
the
tell
house,
you.
what's a $200,000
Well, I can-
ballpark?
That's my own,
Oh.
that's my home, so I can
Oh.
kind of tell you. So when, I mean, I had a $300,000 mortgage on my house. Now granted, I refinanced before the rates went skyrocketing, right? I'm paying roughly $1,850 for a $300,000 house.
That's
then-
just your
That's just
mortgage.
That's, no, that's mortgage and taxes
Mortgage and
Mortgage and
taxes.
taxes.
Insurance?
and insurance.
Oh, that's good.
Now that's I mean, I think I might have a 3 or a 3.5.
Yeah.
So
you're-
now we're in the 5 to 6.
So say you're
7.
2,000.
Sure.
Right.
So
You're-
that,
you're
but that's
close.
300, that's a
Right.
$300,000 mortgage over 30 years, right?
So if you went, what if you took, I don't have a calculator for me, but 300,000, so 200,000 is what, 30% less, about 33 and 30% less?
Yeah, I mean,
He's got taxes and insurance thrown in there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, if you took the 1,850 and take 66% of that, what number does that bring you down to?
50% is 900, so you'd be in the like 1,100 to 1,200 range.
1,200, so so a 1,200 a month would be affordable for a $50,000 person?
A 60,000.
Or 60,000, 50, 60?
What does that average person have to make an hour to be able to afford that?
Yes.
Well, no, that's what I'm trying to get at. That's what I'm,
That's what he's trying to get at.
Yeah,
But
so what we're utilizing is saying $60,000 a year. So, you know, the average starting salary for a teacher with let's just use a teacher. The starting salary in the Taconic and Green, no experience as a teacher is around 45,000. Okay, now a lot of teachers are coming in a little bit higher than that. So let's just say we're now at 50 to 60. I mean, the
Well, if you make
General
$25 an hour, that's about 52 a year.
Yeah.
Because 25 times 40 is 1,000 a week. So if you're making $25 an hour, no, I'm just to throw it out there as a number. If you make $25 an hour, that's about 52,000 a year.
that's correct. Yeah,
Mhm.
So that's-
60,000 is 28.
So it's,
That's as a single, right? That's
That would
another
be a
thing to
single,
keep in
yep.
mind.
Oh, what's 80% AMI? What does that come up? What
Sorry,
is-
so the average median right now is 66.
That's what they told me last night. It's only funding for 80%
66,000 is the
or
average
lower
median income.
AMI.
in Bennington County.
So what did you just say, Jonathan?
66 is the average.
So let's back that out then. If you go 66,000, Jonathan,
What?
66,000,
Mhm.
what could you afford?
Well, that's 20,
It's
66 is
2200.
22,000 divided by 12. It's a month.
No, I'm saying, okay, so 2,200 per month you could afford. Is
No,
that what you're saying?
no, 66,000 divided by 12 is, sorry, I'm sorry. I forgot to take the figures.
30% of that.
So that's just under 20,000,
That's the county.
right? And then 20,000
divided
divided by 12 is 1666.
So if you have two people, they.
So what,
1700.
so 1,666 a month, what type of mortgage could you support mortgage taxes at 1,666?
That would be somewhere
Most
between,
years.
well, I mean, using my old, I can't do mortgage rates right now, but let's
Right,
just
but-
say probably somewhere between 250 and 300.
Mhm.
Probably now closer to 300
Should have that.
because, oh no, sorry. I go the other way.
250.
Yeah,
Closer to
closer to
250,
250 because of the
225.
higher interest rates.
So we're really trying to find, I guess what I'm trying to get at is what price range do the houses or units or whatever we're looking for have to be
Right, to get to that.
to get to this?
300,000, about 310,000 is
For
what you-
sale, that, a landlord, I learned an interesting calculation that I hadn't heard, but it works in the similar way.
Mhm.
They say, whatever the rent is, multiply that by 40. You need to make that amount of money to afford that rent. So if you've got $1,500 for rent, if that's what you want to get for your apartment, you
Mhm.
need to have somebody making $60,000 a year to be able to afford that apartment.
It's pretty accurate.
And to me, by the way, I know there are statistics. $66,000 for a median is way too high for Bennington County. I don't believe that number at all.
Yeah, I agree. Way too high.
May I just give you a point of information, okay? The 2024 AMI for Bennington County is $101,000, okay? I don't know what number, but for 2024, that's what the AMI is. And it is skewed because if you looked at it just for the Bennington town or just one, it's because of Manchester and Dorset. And there's other people who are now living here and working, but they're working for companies outside of our towns.
And they're making $300,000-$400,000 a
They're
year.
making a lot more money.
On that number, right.
Yeah.
The people
Yeah.
looking for housing are not making
That's
$66,000.
right. They have
No,
housing.
that's what I'm saying. So that's what, so back Joanne's point is there's a lot of people in our area that are making less than 80% of this AMI, which then therefore qualifies us, whoever, to apply for grants, because a lot of the grants are, you have to be servicing people who are making between 30 and 80% AMI. And of course, it gets adjusted depending on how many people live in the house. So there's this whole HUD gets involved in.
So does the way
I'm sorry,
way the
I saw the
grants
number.
work, is it the way, I'm trying to understand how the grants work. So if I was in that range and I wanted to buy a house and it was a $300,000 house, say, how would the grant go towards the monthly payment?
These are for the builders.
So there's
These are
grants that are for builders.
Or the builder
The
gets the
builder,
grant? Okay,
yeah.
okay.
As long as they're putting them in
Into the
for the
housing.
houses that are gonna be
Okay.
for the
Understand.
80% or lower, because that's where the grant is.
And then that's where you get covenants added to it, so then they can't be turned into
Right.
short-term
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
rentals as well. So it's kind of all this connectivity with these
Yeah.
funds, but.
One thing I was just thinking too, maybe, because we've got an election coming up, and there'll probably be a lot of people, obviously from town, coming to the town hall. Do you think we should put some type of questionnaire out? Maybe someone could write up a questionnaire or something like that to see what the townspeople are looking for? Because I mean, we're basically working for the town. I mean, it's town property. We're trying to help the town out, but we don't have a lot of attendance here. And it'd be just nice to get the pulse from the people in the town to see what they're looking
I
for.
don't think that would be the place to do it, though. I think it'll be too
Well, another issue.
plan an
that
event or something, I think.
is that many people coming in to vote already have houses here in town. It's the ones who don't live in town who need houses here that we really need to talk to.
Okay.
There, yeah, I think there's a broad swath, and I know we started this on that first conversation of what will we be looking at survey.
Right.
I think knowing also that already, as of yesterday, 750 of the 2,700 voters have already voted.
Mm.
We've already
Okay.
missed the vote.
I was just thinking
on
of a way to
third.
get townspeople, people, but you're right.
Right.
If you're already in town, it's.
You have a house.
By the way, that was a report from the VHFA assessment of Bennington County and the Homes for All toolkit.
Yeah, so it changes
You're
all the
right.
time. So it
Every
used to,
year.
yeah, it goes, every year it goes, it changes.
So,
So that's
so it's
deceiving,
interesting.
I guess is
We
the
need
word.
to
Oh, yeah.
Deceiving.
get that. So I mean, so I know I've spoken to you a little bit here and there, but I mean, you're focused, you've been looking at ways to, one, what is the amount of money? I'm obviously we've had this conversation for the last few minutes now about what is the number that's going to allow us backing into, like, if this is what people are going to be able to afford, what could be built for that? And how is that possible?
There you go.
Right?
So who are you speaking with? What types of builders? Very small scale builders or?
Small scale.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of different components that my thought was the airport, obviously, because there's water and sewer almost up there now.
but that's large scale. Would you consider that relatively larger?
Well,
scale?
it depends on what you do.
If you phased it in.
If you
could-
phase it in, it could be,
small.
it could be small to start
Right.
and build your way up.
Mm.
But my thought is to keep it in the affordable range, if that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
I mean, if we're trying to build a house that anybody can come in and buy and then just turn around and sell
No.
next year,
no,
that's not helping
no.
what we're trying to do, I don't think.
no.
I mean,
And where are you at with the short-term rental? You would have putting that as a register them in?
If you follow the planning commission meeting, you will see that I have, we talked about it, we're talking about it again next meeting, that we are going to institute a registry.
Oh, good.
We're gonna submit it to the select board, but we're gonna come up with an idea of a registry for short-term rentals and a limited number of licenses for this. Yeah, we're gonna give out. That way we don't have, and the licenses will depend on the amount of available housing, basically. So that we're not, basically every single empty house in town is suddenly a short-term rental. We only, a certain percentage of will be allowed to be short-term rentals and, based on who first come, first serve for the licenses.
And once you have one, is it good for a long period of time or how?
A year.
That's the other,
A
so every year. I
Every
have.
year,
Have to
Okay.
reevaluate or re-register?
re-register,
So-
get a license every year.
So Leon, John, and Tim, what do you see as like the next, I mean, where do you see yourself going next? Like, what's the next thing for you? I mean,
to try to get a little closer to the total package.
okay,
I mean, I've just started. I've got infrastructure, they're talking 4 to 5 million in that range
Hmm.
to get the sewer and the water up there and the drives
Yes.
in and all that. And then try to divide it out by the amount of units we could put there.
Hmm.
And also try to figure out how how it gets paid for.
Yeah,
How it
yeah,
works. I mean,
right.
if you sell,
Sewer grant money, but it's running out.
right, but do you, I mean, obviously the town's not gonna foot the bill. But the thought was, and I'm not sure how it works, I'm gonna try to figure it out, but if the town had the property and, which they do own, I mean, they could subdivide that 60 acres, take 4 15-acre lots and probably get $1 million a lot. So you gotta figure the property's
Yeah.
worth something, and it's taxpayer, you know, we're all part of the town, so. I thought that if the water and sewer, I know they're talking about running water and sewer down Richville Road a little farther, whatever, but maybe if they switch that priority this way, and again, it's just an idea. And as the place is sold, because I was thinking more of a for sale
Mhm.
place, that part of the cost of the house would be obviously the house or the manufactured home or whatever it is. You'd have the manufactured home price, you'd have a little chunk for land price, you'd have a little chunk for the water and sewer price. So as a project sold out, the town would recoup their money. That's just.
100% agree, 100% agree. That, I mean, but looking at the little proposal we had a moment ago, there was a little section right when you first pull into it that was, single level homes. That would be a great starting point, that little plot of land there, just as an experiment for this whole project, and as it sells, then you can extend the infrastructure up the hill, do another one in distance.
If we even need it.
Right, right.
You never know, if like you
right.
say, you need this amount of houses, if we start with 30 or 40
Mhm.
the first year or so, and then say 3 or 4 or 5 years that we don't need it anymore, or maybe we need more,
Yep.
we can.
But the idea is plan for the future too.
Yeah.
Lock
Right.
yourself into
No,
a
no,
corner.
Right.
no.
Now, I have been looking into, and I have sent some things to Jonathan, were some homes, I keep finding these prefab companies in Canada that make just super nice prefab homes that they are basically, they don't come in 2 halves, they come in sections, and they're SIPs, they're put together.
No.
Flatbed trailer rolls in, the crew from the company jumps off, assembles it onto the pad, they leave, in a couple of days, there's a house. And the house, the prices are like, in our money, it's like, it's 100,000 their money, but it's like 70,000 our money. $140,000 for a 3-bedroom. That's in their money. Our money would be like 110 or something like that. So it's,
There is the added pad costs and everything
there's
else.
the pad and development, of course, the landscaping, but when you get past that, the cost of the building, the concrete and the excavating and all of that, and the plumbing and sewer, you're probably looking at $175,000, $180,000 for a house, which is very affordable
That's,
Definitely.
for someone.
that's what I'm looking for.
And that's what I'm.
That's what I'm looking for, that range.
That's where.
And again, the infrastructure, the 4 to 5 million, whatever, I just got a price real ballpark price on it.
Mhm.
But obviously the more houses you put, if you figure we could put 400, 300, 400 houses, whatever we could put up there, you divide it out by that, and then that's what the town would recoup on each house. And if we don't build them all, well, the town still has the option of doing something different up there, whether it's big houses, whatever they want to build. But I just think that'd
Well, and
be a good starting point.
And,
know.
to go back to, speaking of infrastructure, this is the time when we have, if we're talking about sewer, doing things like potentially geothermal where, I don't know if you were there for this part, but talking about co-oping, because who owns the actual network,
Mhm.
right? I mean, this
Yeah.
could be its own district of homes that
Yeah.
maintain themselves.
They
So
run it themselves,
that's, this is all encouraging.
yeah.
So let's keep
So much
the ball rolling. And I think that's fantastic. So thank you for the work that you've done already. So, Joanne,
Okay,
her one person show.
well, thanks to Jonathan who put this all together in a little PDF, but we should all have this little package.
This is draft.
It's a draft, so it's just started, more will come.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
Copy that.
as we talked about the designations, we have the village and we have the neighborhood. And then if there's a little area outside the neighborhood, going, bigger and bigger, you can do the priority housing, which is putting housing in where it's within a quarter of a mile of the ending of the neighborhood. So these are the little, on the back, you'll see all kinds of benefits, on the state level benefits you'll see. For, each designation is the downtown village. So ours is the village and the neighborhood, the last one, the second one and the last one. And you will see what the benefits are, and you'll get priority considerations for grants because of it. Now, again, what I learned last night was the grants are really available for those building 80% AMI or less. There isn't a lot of grant funding for anything higher than that. From market level funding.
Right.
There isn't that much. So these are the different opportunities that we can concentrate on aside from the airport road area. These, within our sewer area and water area, the properties that we have identified that are in that, I think there's a list of the properties we've identified so far.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you mind me asking, are those all our designations currently? Is that what you're saying?
No. So we have the second one, village,
Yeah.
and the last one, neighborhood development area. Those are the two we have. So those,
And just based on your quick summary of what you did there, would you make a recommendation that we pursue any of the other designations? I mean, not that you have to answer that question. I just
Well-
don't know if you kind of dug a little deeper
I
and
don't
said,
know.
wow, look, downtown actually makes more sense because we got a lot more grant opportunities or something. I don't know.
well, I don't think we're eligible for some of these. I don't know, maybe Gordon.
I don't, I know that Janet has been
Yeah.
pushing the idea of expanding the downtown designation area.
Downtown, I don't think we even have the downtown.
Well,
We have the village and the neighborhood.
but look, I mean, I'm just looking at growth center. I mean, we're talking about, I mean,
Yeah, those aren't, we're not
What?
qualified
What are you
for
looking
that.
at?
That's
Growth
for
center.
new- That's for new.
right, but I mean,
Yeah.
if we're discussing potential of smart growth, building in like an entire, let's just say that Kyle's plan was a potential and it was where we were going. That's a village within our, not that word, that term, but it is a town or a growth center within our community.
I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
so
the question.
I
to ask. I don't see it as a growth center because it's.
Well, I guess, what's the
really
definition?
outside.
What's the
What's the
definition?
definition?
But it's not though, because it would be within,
Is it within,
of sewer?
yeah.
Yes,
where's the
it's within a
sewer?
quarter. I mean, that's the thing. If we're gonna be expanding the sewer line down Richville Road.
Right, but that doesn't, I don't know that map, but it doesn't say the street numbers and everything, right?
No, it doesn't. So.
So it's possible, it's possible, we can look into that, yeah.
It actually looks like, and I'm trying to visualize in a black and white, and I
Oh,
apologize.
you sent me a color copy, didn't you?
Well, the town property, it backs up to 7, right?
Yes, it does.
So I mean, conceivably, if
Yes, no,
you
that's,
could always have an exit. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just,
I don't know about,
I don't know.
It's
It's just a thought. I mean, I don't know.
no, it's definitely a thought. I mean, they basically did that for the Orvis
Correct.
headquarters.
Yeah,
Right, so sure, anything is possible.
no.
so,
Hmm,
well, so this is in development. There
Yeah,
needs to
I
be
mean,
some tweaking on this. The idea is that this is gonna be something that we can constantly work and tweak, and this is kind of and I think I had a fantastic conversation with Cindy specifically about how we really get into being as specific as possible and making it as clear cut as possible. Like, here is where you are, here is what's possible. So I think a great example is John just looked at this and said, oh, so we have all of these designations, so I can do all of these. And right, no, this is just a document from the state, right?
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah,
of these.
yeah.
So making it as clear as day that if I want to move to Manchester or I'm here and I want to stay here, here's my toolkit. And I know we have the state But I think making it apply to Manchester
Hmm.
is incredibly important because I want someone to, there'd be no question that if I live at 3522 Richville Road and I have an acre of property that I know based on X, Y, and Z, I have this as my possibilities and this is where I could potentially go because they might not even realize that they're eligible for X, Y, and Z.
I also think
What-
to jump on that is if you look at that article that
From
Gordon sent us from Rutland, if you go down some of the links, you can get down to, there is actually a guidebook, a guidebook there that is for developers or for people who want to do, you know, whatever.
Mhm.
And it's really, I didn't go all the way into it, but it looked like it was really informative and easy to understand where you could get good direction. So you know, okay, I want to come in and I found this piece of land, I'm gonna buy it, I wanna know what does Manchester rules of how big can a lot has to be, or how many houses you can put on an acre, or think, you know, all those little nitty gritty things. But just having a place, because if you really want to attract and really look like we want to bring people in from out of, because developers are too busy around here, we want to bring in more people, you got to be open, you know, for business and make it easy.
And yes, we have the land use and ordinance document, but as we can all attest to, it's lengthy. And it's not that it's wrong or bad or anything. I'm just saying we could, some
Tweak
one
it.
sheets.
Tweak it a little bit, yeah.
So before we go, if I can just, last night I met with Katie from the League of Cities and Towns.
Mhm.
And she gave me a few pointers or ideas or insights. And one of the things, like I mentioned before, was donating land. She really thought that was something we should be doing in municipalities to speed things up, to get things on track.
Donating it to who?
Land.
The
Huh?
projects.
Donating it to, from donate, the
To-
town
To the
donating.
developer. Yeah, that's what she was, what?
Cities.
Oh.
It's like.
You know who I work for?
I'm just saying, I don't know what that
I
means
know.
to you, but.
Yeah, Rutland does it all the time.
Also waiving permit fees. She
Mhm.
suggested we waive permit fees. And reduce property taxes on properties through tax stabilization for 5 years. TIP, have you heard of that? TIP, okay.
A tip.
Yeah, I mean, Hale is asking for that down in Bennington right now.
Yeah.
They've got this really ridiculously low tax assessment on the old high school
Mhm.
building
Mhm.
that they want to keep in place and then have it only go up to 1.5 million even after all these things are built for the next 4
Is that what
years or so.
stabilization, is that what that means?
Yeah, that's so you just delay the tax
I-
benefit.
Yeah,
That's
a good idea. That's something to,
It's always a possibility, but
Well, I mean,
it's
that's,
not just automatic.
no,
Yeah.
I'm just listing what she suggested, but, you know.
and that, you know,
make
that
the process go
particular
quicker.
example, what you were just saying, the property as it was being renovated up at the College of St. Joe's, you know, the valuation of the property was tripled in a matter of a year.
Yeah.
And with, by the way, Rutland City's tax rate, their millage rate is what, 3.5?
Yeah.
I mean, compared to ours, I mean, in half that. So that was a significant tax bump. So anyway,
And of
that's
course,
the benefit.
extending sewer and water.
Yeah.
At the cost of a grant of the town,
Yeah.
that would be something great to do.
In other business, I'd like to ask you guys an opinion. I think about proposing to the planning commission that we make a rule that any new development that comes into town has to, you know, as far as a business, any new businesses that are built have to include housing above the business. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, and there's also, sorry, but there's incentives to do that.
Well, yeah,
There's a
right.
there's state funding.
Right. In the old days, this was like a common thing to build a, you know, the ground floor business with a, you know,
Yeah, it
House
says that in
upstairs.
there, actually, in one of these.
but it's something we've gotten away from, whereas things are built without that. You know, Rite Aid is a good example of a, you know, that whole
Yeah, it could be something.
apartments.
I don't know, you know, Bennington had a requirement of a second floor in certain areas. But they didn't require anything to be in the second floor. So they have these facades that make it look like a two-story building and there's nothing there.
There.
Isn't that, it depends part of, in our ordinance now, that if you're going to build a new building, you have a second floor. But it only has to be a percentage, and the second floor could contain mechanicals or storage. It does not have to be. I'm pretty sure we've got that all in there already.
But we could add it in as apartments, and then that would help our housing. I mean, yeah, because the new Christos is a good example of some of.
But they're doing a separate building altogether, so it's not.
No, they're doing houses
Oh, that's
upstairs,
upstairs.
above the restaurant.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking of a place like Cumberland Farms buys the old gas station there where Firefly.
You're gonna
You're gonna put an apartment above the gas station?
There's already one above Jolly. So, I mean,
Really?
Really?
has you ever seen the staircase in the back that goes up to the top?
There might be mechanicals up there. I'm unaware of any.
Sure, it's an apartment.
Above what?
Jolly.
Well, it's gonna be Stewart's.
Right, exactly. They got bought by Stewart's.
Well,
So
I think that might be a little bit of a tough one. We gotta talk about
Yeah,
that.
well,
We'll talk about that.
We only have a couple of minutes.
Bring it to them.
We only have 4 minutes left
Yeah.
for public comment.
You know, but to Leon's point, I mean, it's probably not a bad idea to kind of spin something off similar to the parking fee. You know, a fee allocated on development similar to the parking. You don't have enough parking, you're gonna pay this fee. I mean, you can go down that road. I mean,
But I'd have to ask the question, not to get too deep into this, but is it for a brand new build or replacing an existing building, which is what's happening at Christos, for
Brand new
example?
build.
Like when Sam's moved back to that older set, now is that responsibility that they have to build housing, even though they existed elsewhere in town? So
I mean,
There's a-
something can
yeah.
be discussed.
New building.
He's talking new build.
New
New
build.
building.
Deb, you-
I just want to say that we do have the gravel pit still, and we are putting that up for sale. That's 20 acres and right there by the pump station. So that's gonna go on sale probably this weekend.
Oh.
I'll be putting the sign up, just to, that's another piece of the puzzle, but.
It's-
So if you don't mind, what's the price?
I don't really want to say, but you can always call on the phone number I'll be having. Right? I mean, we're on TV, right?
Yes. Thank you, Deb, for the heads up. I mean,
I've been offered already on it, but I'm putting a for sale sign out to see how much more I can draw. And try to do that, just so you're aware that there's 24 acres there that kind of around similar area.
correct. Yes.
Big chunk there. And it all was wanted to 84 quarters of it. Right now,
so it's done.
40 acre, 30 acre lots. Or 84 quarter acre lots, which we got planned out and everything. I don't know if we will to town with it, but he had planned that for that parcel. So that's what it could have been, not saying nowadays, but back when he was doing things.
That's,
And it would have been, like I said, 84 quarter acre lots.
Yeah.
thank you, Deb.
And it was always a higher flushing toilets. Nowadays, they have lower flushing, so things like that, you don't use as much. Allotment of water, or whatever.
If you look back 40 years, it was really affordable going prefab.
It was the prefab.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know.
Very
Yeah.
affordable.
I bought a lot.
And I got my house in New Hampshire.
My neighborhood.
They were good quality too.
I'll also just for an update, without going into any detail at all, there are developer inquiries and serious inquiries that could be up to 100 new units that are out there.
Fantastic.
That's what I mean.
Now you've got us.
Like, hanging on every word.
Looks like there's
Market rate,
a lot of land on Ridgeville Road between the towns.
So I know we didn't get to discussing the potential town plan. That, I know we have, so the next meeting we have scheduled is on the 21st of November. I have it down for this room, but based on the content, we may move to a smaller room. I wanted it in here because I didn't know what the audience would be and also to be able for everyone to see. But we do have the statewide housing conference that's coming up on the 14th of November. I will be there. Cindy will be there. John's going to be there. So
Could we allot, just to say that if at the next meeting, we could allot a little bit of time for you guys to kind of share with us
Yeah,
what you
that's a great
learned?
idea.
That'd be
Absolutely.
great.
That's a great
I,
idea.
I just need to note, I won't be here on the 21st.
That's right.
I have a
Did you
Habitat
just
Board-
dial in?
No, I'm at a Habitat Board meeting that night.
So,
Sorry.
so for next meeting, if we can, because we do need to get this over to the housing task force, or sorry, the planning commission. If you can please dial in on reviewing. I've put some general thoughts together I can share with the group to kind of get things going and point some things out. And then if you want to, make comments, et cetera, and then we can come back at the next meeting, which is on the 21st, which now moves us to a 4-week cycle, not a 3-week cycle.
On this, is that what you're talking? Or you're-
No, so our next meeting moves us from the 3-week cycle to the 4-week cycle. And then on the 21st, any commentary that you have on recommendations for the town plan, we should finalize it at that. Okay?
So you'll send us
Yes.
share us what you've
Yep.
got so far. Okay. So I had a couple more things, but we'll save them for another time.
Mhm.
Anything else?
Can I just ask a question? If we move to the 4-week cycle, the next meeting would be on December 19th. That's a Thursday. Does that work for everybody? So we know in advance
No,
versus waiting to the next meeting to find out we can't make a 4-week meeting because the 19th doesn't work?
yeah, unfortunately, we've adjusted the Habitat meetings to that as well because of the holidays.
Yeah.
So I won't be here for November or December if we keep them on those dates, but please don't adjust just because of me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can take a survey of everyone else as we get closer, because the thing is Christmas is not until the following midweek. So
right.
it's like the latest it could possibly be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on the 25th.
It's on the 25th. It is on the 25th this year?
Yes.
Wow.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.